Hey, I'm Ashley Sloggett, and I'm from Burlington, Ontario. I was born in Hamilton, but I only lived there for I don't know, a month. Um, so, yeah.
You forgot.
No, hang on. It's going to come to me. Oh, yeah. And so I'm a singer, first and foremost. I play guitar, so. And you might know me from a band called Dirty Jeans, who are now defunct, but we're actually doing one reunion show in December, which is super exciting. But yeah, and then, yeah, I've also had, a few records out under just my solo name, Ashley Sloggett, super original. And then I also do acting and photography. And over the pandemic, I became a TV producer for indie TV shows. What else? Yeah, I'm one of those do a million kind of things people. So that's me in a nutshell. Main influences growing up, I would have to say, it's so cheesy, but my parents, we were a very musical household. And, I was born in the 80s, so we had awesome music. And it wasn't just what you would expect your parents to listen to. My mom was huge into Frank Zappa and Alice Cooper and Annie Lennox, the Eurythmics and stuff. And then my dad, he was really into, Woodstock and the 70s and loved Cream and Eric Clapton. But then also Neil Young and Joni Mitchell and Joan Baez. And I think that was very influential on me. The biggest one, actually my first musical memory ever was watching Kate Bush. My parents had a Betamax of the Hounds of Love record, but it was all the music videos from that album. And side note, when Stranger Things had Running Up That Hill in it, it took everything in me to not gatekeep Kate Bush, because I was like, no, she's mine. I've listened to her since I was born. But no, it's very good. She's iconic, and I'm glad the rest of the world has finally caught on. But yeah, she was a huge influence for me in singing. You hear this amazing voice. And then, as I got older, you kind of get away from your parents' music. And obviously, I had a younger brother, and he was really into hip hop. And again, we were born in the 80s, grew up in the 90s. There was a huge hip hop and rap scene. And then you had, punk, and No Doubt was my be all and end all in grade 5. I loved Gwen Stefani, which again, I'm showing my age, but, that was just something accessible. And then that sort of gatewayed us into discovering local music and local bands and, friends that had big brothers in bands. That was sort of how that came to be. But, yeah, those were my main influences growing up. And then I'm trying to think in my teens and stuff, that was sort of when I really started to find my own musical.
Yeah.
I started flyering for shows. I had a boyfriend in high school who gave me a mixtape that had Always Outnumbered, Grade, Saves the Day, Knapsack. Yeah, Saves the Day. Saves the Day actually was and is still one of my favorite bands. Chris Connolly has gone through some stuff where he, is a little problematic right now, but mental health is such a thing. But yeah, I just ate that up with a spoon, because it was to hear someone write in a way that reminded me of a Joni Mitchell or a Neil Young, the way that they would paint with words. in this punk driven power pop, dynamic was so cool to me. But yeah, those are my influences in a nutshell, like growing up. A mixture of my parents and then some boyfriends and siblings, and yeah, it's pretty cool. All right. Okay, so what got me into punk, metal, and hardcore specifically? So here's the crazy thing is you've heard my influences growing up, and my parents had pretty, broad taste. And I mean, like, Black Sabbath to my mom was heavy, which, I mean, at the time, that, like, when she was a kid, yeah, it was groundbreaking. And I didn't really know anything about that band, except that, my dad had a record of it and all good. But then you fast forward to the era when we moved from one of my family houses to a different house when I was in grade 7. And one of my neighbors, who I had gone to school with her my whole life, but we lived now around the corner from each other, and she was my best friend through that whole time, and she had an older brother. I didn't have an older brother. So her older brother Mark, her name was Allison, her older brother Mark was friends with these guys in this band called Slurpy Monday. And I remember her showing me this CD. And honestly, I couldn't even really tell you now what Slurpy Monday sounded like. I just remember listening to it and being like, wait, they have a CD? Like, like, what do you mean? They're like in your world and they have a CD? I thought you had to like be from Los Angeles or New York to have a CD. And that was like the pivotal defining moment for me. And from then on, she was like my musical buddy. We went to concerts together. And that was kind of what made me realize that there was a local music scene. So there was a couple elements. Her with her older brother and the Slurpy Monday CD, and then I learned that there was this band called Trunk, and that were from before, like, I think that they had broken up by the time we started going to shows, but there was like church basement shows and the music center and the YMCA. All the
Sonic Onion bands.
Yeah, all the Sonic Onion bands. So spoiler alert, the YMCA is like mega influential in why I am who I am today. So we learned that there was local shows, and that again also blew our mind, that we could go to see bands that weren't on the radio and be near them and not pay $50 with our allowance. So we go to, I think it was a Y show or maybe a Music Center show or something. And I am instantly like, I need to be here. Because you have to keep in mind, too, I grew up in North Burlington. And if you know anything about Burlington, anything north of the highway in like the 90s and early 2000s was like Shelbyville. So north of the highway was very like alternative rock, a lot of, I'm trying to think, like, I don't know what you would, I hate to say it, but it's like college music. You know what I mean? Like the guys that wanted to be like Pearl Jam and...
You said it perfectly.
Right? That's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
It was college music. And, I mean, in hindsight, I love the Tragically Hip now. But at the time, it was like, oh, college music. Like, And then south of the highway was where all the cool, like, punks and skaters and, like... all the cool guys were, right? East End Burlington represent. So, again, so I went to a jock high school, so a lot of alternative music, a lot of jocks, and we were a big high school. So that was like, oh my God, we crossed down the highway, like we crossed the highway, went to where the shows were happening that weren't like a coffee house cabaret at my high school, and we saw like punk bands, and I think maybe it was Jersey or something. I honestly don't remember. And like I said, I was absolutely hooked, and I was like, okay, this is where I need to be. And that is what kind of blew the floodgates open, and I started postering. I volunteered to put up the posters so I could get into the shows for free. And I remember I didn't really need volunteer hours for high school, but that was like one of the things that was like being advertised. Oh, that was it on the 905 board. That was part of it. So my era too. So the 905 board was like new, and we had ICQ and MSN Messenger. So we, you know, I'm a true millennial, right? We had this new thing called the internet where we could talk to each other and bands and show promoters and stuff that didn't go to your high school. Oh my God, what a concept, right? So you can see, like, it's this web of all these things that is like lightning in a bottle, right? I had exposure from the Big Brother, exposure from finding this magic little scene called a local punk show that, oh my God, blew my mind. And then you had the internet. And that was just like all those three things exposed me to the entire scene, specifically punk, metal, and hardcore. That's like a whole other tangent. And I guess I could sum it up in a few ways. So punk specifically I got into a little later, because again, like I was more into like emo and stuff like that, which, I mean, if you want to get crazy, it's a subgenre of punk. So I think the ethos is what I got into, right? It was the punk ethos of, oh my God, there's this thing where you put on shows and you do it yourself. For me, it wasn't necessarily like a certain sound. It was the idea of doing it yourself. And that's what got me into it. And then I got really into, I'm trying to think. So hardcore, I could probably pinpoint it, and this will be funny to all the purists out there. Again, so remember that boyfriend from high school? He took me to a place called the Music Gym, and that was the hub, and that was like where magic was happening, and Justin Coop and Tim Park were making these records for these amazing bands, and he took me to a session, or I don't even know if it was a session, but just a bunch of people were hanging out there. And I was new in going to shows, but I recognized these people. And he was in a band too, and that was part of it. But they had just gotten demos for the Boys Night Out, Broken Bones and Bloody Kisses EP. Like, I think it might have even been just the demo. And they were all listening to it, and again, I had heard hardcore at the shows and stuff, but it wasn't one specific band that I was like, oh, I'm really into this and I get it. Then I heard B&O, and I was like, wait a minute, this music is like, it's poppy, it's radio, it's hooky, but then there's screaming, and it's about killing people.
Emotional hardcore.
It's emotional hardcore. And I mean, I don't know if they loved that they fell into that screamo genre. I don't know. I mean, I think that they know they are. I mean, I'm very good friends with them still, but yeah, that was like one of the pivotal things where I'm like, oh, this is what I like. Like, this is the world colliding of that. And then that sort of gatewayed me into other bands that were more hardcore and, you know, stuff like that. And actually, well, that's how I learned about Grade, which you know how much I love Grade, because I'm like, wait a minute, they're referencing that, and then Silverstein was referencing that, and, you know, like all the bands from my era were all referencing the older hardcore, so that was always my MO, was like, okay, find the bands that you like, and then what are their influences? Like, listen to your influences to understand where they're coming from. Instead of just being like, oh, I want to be in a band like XYZ.
You read the linear notes and you search those bands out.
Exactly, 100%.
What do they think?
Yeah. So that was that. And then there was this band in the early to mid 2000s that like blew up called Dead and Divine. And I remember when they started playing shows, because at this point now I was promoting, and I was like, because I was fully invested, like bought and sold, drank the Kool-Aid, like I now became the girl that was running the shows. And because I just wanted to be there. I wanted to be at the center of the action. Like, give me a party, give me a show, even though I didn't party. And many people will remember me as like the Y girl, like, no drinking, right? But I mean, whatever. We had to keep the doors open, right? So, yeah, Dead and Divine were kind of the most like metalcore kind of stuff that I got into. I wasn't ever really into like metal. I respect it. I understand it. To me, it's like, you know, distorted classical, which my mom is obsessed with classical. So I get it. And then if you want to go like pure hardcore, my tastes obviously through my teens and early 20s and stuff like came from the punk and the screamo and all of that. But when I started dating my now forever man, Brad, he was older than me, and he grew up with like the good hardcore, and like his first show was Chokehold and Incision.
I was probably there.
Yeah, and he was like 13 years old. So, you know, then he showed me Incision and he showed me Chokehold, and I was like, oh, okay, like my palate now understands why this is so good. And also knowing the history and all of that, and understanding how influential those bands were on like an entire genre, an entire scene, right? So, yes, that is my long-winded punk, metal, hardcore, you know, whatever. Okay, so my first concert, if you, like, let's not count, like, Raffi and Sharon Lois and Bram when I was, like, 4.
I was about to say that too. I was about to ask you.
Right? So my first big concert was a grad present, a grade 8 or grade 6, I don't remember what year, but one of those grads, you know, middle school grads. My uncle bought tickets for me, my brother, my 2 cousins, 2 girl cousins, to go to Cops Coliseum and see Britney Spears. And it was right when she had just come out.
You want to put that on camera?
Yeah, I know. I will
I'm joking.
admit it. And because you have to remember, Steve, like, I know that you're Mr. like punk rock hardcore, but I am also a huge pop girl. And, you know, I should have put this in the...
Yeah, Son Odell.
Yeah, well, I mean, she's still punk adjacent, like, or the band is, like, they were ska punk, open for Sublime. You know, but, no, I'm totally thinking, I'm like, oh man, I totally forgot to put in Mariah Carey and Celine Dion as my musical influences as a teenager, because I wanted to be a diva.
It's in there now.
So here we go, so put that in. But yeah, so my first big concert was Britney Spears. It was the Hit Me Baby One More Time tour. And I know in hindsight now, why my uncle took us, because he was in his 30s and he's a man, so gross. Sorry, Uncle Jeff. But I mean, I will say, like, to have that as your first concert when, you know, you're looking at like late 90s, the spectacle of the pop industry at that time, it was massive. You had the Spice Girls, you had all the boy bands, Backstreet Boys and whatever, Britney Spears. To see the biggest star in the world at the time,
I would have went too.
Because, well, the show was millions of dollars. The dancers and the costumes and the music and like the music, you know, we're not talking like groundbreaking, you know, songwriting here.
It's a spectacle.
But the spectacle and the larger than life aspect got me. I was not the world's biggest Britney Spears fan. I didn't have any of her CDs or anything. But it is pretty cool in hindsight to have that, like, oh wow. I would equate it, maybe not, people might hate me for saying this, but like I could just imagine seeing Michael Jackson when he came out.
That would make it.
Right? Yeah. And like just for the pop, like big show, like element of it. But yeah, so that was my first big concert, and I hid that for a very long time. I did not tell anybody that I saw Britney Spears.
Nothing to be embarrassed about.
But I mean, yeah, whatever. I'm gonna own it. I was a kid in the '90s. Like, let's do it. And then, so my first big punk concert, though, like not just a show, because I was going to local shows, but I didn't go see like big rock concerts or punk concerts. The first one I went to without my parents, with a friend, my friend Allison. We went to see Green Day, Blink-182, Saves the Day, and I think Jimmy Eat World opened, but I might be confusing that with a Taking Back Sunday show. But it was the Pop Disaster Tour in like 2001 or 2002 or something, which, you know, again, makes me feel like such a late bloomer. Like, you know, you have all these guys that are, oh, I saw so-and-so in 1992. But, like, again, this was me, like, discovering music,
It's not your fault you weren't born earlier.
I know, and I'm so nostalgic for an era that I will never know.
I get pissed off because of people before me.
Right? And I think that's the best part, right? Where I'm like, oh, well, what do you mean you didn't get to see Elvis when he first came out? Like, you know, okay, like, how far back are we gonna go? But yeah, so that was like the first big concert, you know, bought my own tickets, went without my parents, without a, you know, no chaperone. I think we were in grade 9 or something. And it was like a big concert, first big concert. I'm trying to, and yeah, it was insane. And it was also, again, funny because I knew Green Day and I loved Green Day. I had Dookie and Insomniac and Nimrod and all of that. But this was kind of their, like, they kind of went a little bit away, and it was, what was their record? Warning, which I think came out in like maybe 2000 or 99. That's probably one of my favorite Green Day records, and a lot of people hated it because it was kind of weird, and there was like, you know, acoustic songs, and there was like even a song like Misery, one of the best songs, and a lot of people don't like it because it's weird and it sounds like a cola, and you know, but I think it's just, I love that record so much. So they were coming back, and it was right before they released American Idiot, which we all know how that went, and that was like insane and, again, amazing. But it was that battle between, like, are you a Green Day fan or are you a Blink fan? And I mean, I loved Blink because they were just such idiots. But yeah, and then I think from there, like, we just went on, and then we would go to every single show we possibly could. Warped Tours and Edge Fests and
Paloozas.
Yeah, we never went to any Paloozas, but Warped was our jam. and then and then like any show that was coming through the Cool House or the government or whatever order it was, or Warehouse?
Warehouse, ain't government.
Was it? Yeah, it was originally Warehouse, then it was Cool House.
The government's it's split.
Right, and then it was split. Yeah. And then from there it's a million other shows. But yeah, those were the two big ones. The two most like first and one I would rather admit was. But yeah, it was good times. Okay, so what were some of your favorite shows?
It could be any genre.
Yes. Yeah. So I have such like rose-colored glasses for my scene. Which, I mean, I guess they're not rose-colored glasses if it really was great. But some of my favorite shows, I would have to say, you know how I'm a huge Saves the Day fan. I would drive like all over to go see them. I went to see Saves the Day and Monine in Rochester, and that was cool. And I loved it. It's weird what you remember. I remember getting, because I don't drink, I got one of those, what do they have down there that they don't have up here? It's called Saranac soda pop shop or something. And I had this like cream soda, and it was like the best cream soda I've ever had on the planet.
Really?
So what does that tell you about the show? The show was amazing, but it was like, I will always now link those two together. I've been to probably like 500 shows, so it's so hard to pick a favorite. I would say Green Day and Anti-Flag at Molson Park with Jimmy Eat World. That was a really wicked show because I think that was like the third time I saw Green Day, or maybe the second. No, I think it was the third. But now they had done American Idiot. They were the biggest band at the time. And again, like they just put on the best live show. Like Billy Joe, oh, what a rock star. Like I just love him so much. But then it's funny too, because then I have other favorite shows. Like I will say, like, seeing Grade at the Dickens, like, what?
Yeah.
Like, that's insane.
It's a small little pub.
The first time I saw them, which they were doing a reunion, was in Guelph, and it was like their second reunion. So they did the one at the Opera House, which I missed because I was running shows, and so I never saw Grade when they were Grade. And then I didn't see Grade when they were somehow Grade. Somehow Hollow. And
Did you go to Chocolate Reunion at Absinthe? Yeah.
Oh, yes, I did. Yes, at Absinthe. Because they did a warm-up show at Hollywood.
Yes.
And I was at that, but that was like an afternoon show. And then, yeah, we went to the one at Absinthe, and that was really cool. And that was really neat to, again, understand, like, where it all kind of came from. And then, what was I going to say? Oh, yeah, so going to the Grade show in Guelph was, like, insane. Probably one of my favorite shows that has, like, a soft spot to me was The Horseshoe, 2007, and it was the St. Alvia album release. And I was with somebody else at the time, no funny business, but I went to the show alone because we had different interests. He didn't want to go to the show. And I went, and Brad was there, my now partner, spouse, husband, forever boyfriend, yeah, whatever.
Significant other.
Yes, my significant other. And he was there. And that was like, wow, you love this band and I love this band, and it was like a soft spot, you know what I mean? And that was pretty cool. And they are still one of my favorite bands. I just absolutely loved what they were doing. I remember when their demos came out on MySpace, and I remember hearing it and like writing this gushy post on the 905 board and just having my mind blown, because I was like, okay, again, this is music I've never really heard. Like, you've heard pieces of different kinds of bands. You hear the Rancid influence and you hear the Clash influence, but then you also have, like, you know, Ben and Richmond and Fisher, all from the Video Dead. You have that, like, the punk edge, and then you have Greg from Jersey singing, and Greg doing the Greg Taylor things, and then you have, like, Bliss on the piano. It was just, it blew my mind, like, what they were doing, and they were just way too ahead of their time. But yeah, so that's one of my favorite shows. And then I would have to say, oh, this is crazy. And then probably, like, when I went to California for a big birthday, and I did the stereotypical, like, drive up the coast thing. I rented a red convertible and, like, did the, like, girl thing and just solo, just rode up the coast. And like Barbie, except my mission was to go to Gilman. And I needed to go. Yeah, I needed to go. And again, you can tell I'm very about, like, the history of things. I'm a big nerd of, like, how did things come to be? Why is this like this? And how did it evolve into, you know, what we know? And at the time I had gotten really into, like, Black Flag and Minor Threat and understanding the precursor to that scene. 'Cause I wasn't really into, like, you know, 80s hardcore and hardcore punk and stuff like that. And then, but again, your tastes change and you get exposed to different things. And I was like, I just want to be in California and understand how that came to be. Yeah. And I understand the whole, like, DC dynamic and East Coast versus West Coast and the different sounds. But going to Gilman and seeing, we know how big of a Green Day fan I am, seeing the, like, Sweet Children thing on the wall and understanding that whole dynamic of, like, you know, Green Day breaking out of that scene and being ostracized.
Was AFI or TV Havoc at that too? Or?
Right? Yeah. Yeah. There was nobody there that, like, I saw a band called White Murder, which were really cool. And then a Mexican band, and I can't remember their name, but they were incredible. And anyways, yeah, so again, it's like, it's not necessarily the bands. I remember liking the bands. I remember that the White Murder band had 2 female vocals that were, like, it was over this, like, aggressive punk, but it was, like, very dreamy, layered female vocals, which is really, like, right up my alley, because I love the, like, the juxtaposition of, like, a really pretty vocal over, like, a really abrasive, or even not necessarily abrasive, just noisy and ambient, like, you know, 2 different worlds colliding. And I think that's probably, obviously, my emo, screamo teenage past. But yeah, it wasn't necessarily the bands, it was just being in that space.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was like, oh my God, I understand. I get it. Like, every mystery of the universe, I understand now how my scene came to be, because we were trying to emulate what they were doing. And then also knowing in the 2000s that all these little scenes all over North America and the world, but mostly North America, were doing that.
Yep.
Scene kids, like, we had this thing that will never exist again, and that's fine, that's okay, it doesn't need to. But you know, you're in something really special at the time, and then you look back and you're like, oh my god, what? That was really cool. So, you know, like, I could go on and on. I mean, I have favorite shows like Alexis on Fire in the Blue Room at the YMCA with Boys Night Out. Like, that was insane. Seeing like the first or second Creepshow at the YMCA. Like, a lot of these I booked. And, you know, Jersey, their Generation Genocide release, all ages show at the YMCA. Like, I wasn't friends with Greg. I wasn't friends with McNabb at the time, and I idolized the shit out of them, and that was one of the first shows I ever booked. And I was like, oh my god, I'm booking a Jersey show? What? Like, pinch me. I'm dying. I'm 15. You know, so, like, it goes on and on. I mean, like, we used to do these things called sponsorships, like sponsorship shows, where the bands would get, like a YMCA membership for the year. And that would allow them, while they're on tour, anywhere in North America, they had somewhere to sleep, shower, shit, you know, just a home base. Because when you're in a DIY band, like, you're sleeping on floors and you may not get to shower for like a week. So with these sponsorships, it actually really did help, and I mean, I think it was a great thing. Again, there's a lot of people that throw a lot of shade to the YMCA ecosystem that we kind of built, because it was like, it was safe. It was, you know, you're not putting your own money on the line. They're charity shows. Like, you're not running real shows because you're not taking any risk. And, like, fuck those people.
At 15, how can you do a show at a bar?
And that was it. And it was a training ground for these bands. And it was also, like, an opportunity for bigger bands to have a free rehearsal. Mm-hmm. A Friday night at 7:30, go do a set, and then you can go play, you know, at the Horseshoe at 11 o'clock at night for your real fans. But those shows were packed, and they were insane. So the sponsorship, sorry, I went on a tangent. So we would always do a big sponsorship show every year. And so the sponsored bands, so Silverstein was sponsored for many years. The Reason, I can't remember if the Junction was sponsored, but there was like quite a few sponsored bands. And the Reason played a show, and I got to sing with them. And it was, again, one of those moments, like you've heard me talk about singing with Grade recently, and dying. It was like that, where I'm like, oh my god, like, this song's on the radio, and I'm singing with Adam, and The Reason, and Ronson, and all these guys who I, like, admire and respect so much for making this amazing music, and getting to sing with them was just, like, huge. So, yeah. I will be here all day if I talk about my favorite shows. So those are the ones that are at the front of my mind. I'll probably text you later and be like, oh my god, I didn't tell you about blah, blah, blah. I don't know. But, yeah, that's good enough for now. Okay, so the craziest thing that's ever happened at a show. So I'm laughing because I'm so boring. Like, Steve, the joke in Dirty Jeans was that, you know, we have our leather jackets and our eyeliner, and we're so tough, and we're from Hamilton, we're from Burlington. And, like, Kelly, our bass player, is the queen of preparedness. All her Girl Scout badges, like, if there was an emergency, she was prepared for it. She's a nurse now, which is, like, incredible. And that was the thing. She just always was prepared. So if anything crazy were to happen, like, we would either have planned around it or navigated around it or whatever. If I go back in time to when I was running shows, I wasn't at this show, but I had to clean up after it, was Haymaker at the Burlington YMCA, and they, like, smashed all the mirrors and stuff. I mean, that was crazy, but I wasn't there. Were you there? Okay, so, I mean, whatever. So, like, I don't know. I heard it was a big deal. Again, like, you got, like, drunk teenagers, even though you try and, like, make sure people that aren't drunk, like, wrecking your venue. We had someone drop, like, weights because it's at the Y. We had weights, like, they dropped them inside a toilet and the toilet smashed. But again, that's just, like, people being disrespectful to a venue that's giving you somewhere to hang out. Like, the craziest thing that's ever happened at a show, this is the craziest thing that's ever happened at a show. It's not crazy like, wow, I can't believe that happened. It's one of those things like, I can't believe that happened. Like, pinch me, am I dreaming? Lou Molinaro, this ain't Hollywood, texts me one day. I'm at work. I was on set doing background for something. I was dressed up, actually. I was in one of my, like, Murdoch Mysteries outfits because I do a lot of acting on that show. And so it was very hilarious, right? That I'm sitting here in my proper, like, my bonnet and my wig and, like, waiting for them to need someone to cross in the back because that's what background is. And I get this text. And it's, hey, Ash, do you know who Dennis Dunaway is? And I was like, do I? Remember, Mom was a big Alice Cooper fan? Yeah, tell me more. Why are you asking me this? Well, what's Dirty Jeans doing on January 31st? And I was like, and I thought he was asking us to open for Dennis Dunaway has a side band called Blue Coupe, and I thought it was maybe for that. Turns out it was his book release, Snakes, Planes, and Guillotines, right there. And it was him doing all the original Alice Cooper group songs that he wrote. He wrote, like, all the hits because he's a genius. And he wanted backup singers to play with him. And Lou pitches it, and I'm like, okay, I'm a singer. I live to harmonize. Like, I was in choir. I did vocal, like, all through high school. I was a theater kid. Are you fucking kidding me? I get to sing harmonies on those songs with the guy who's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for those songs. Insane. So, fast forward, we say yes. I, like, go, hey, Kelly, Bird, like, I know you guys don't love singing as much as I do. That's why I'm the ham and the singer. But, I mean, they do sing in the band as well, but they prefer their instruments, right? Whereas I play guitar out of necessity so that I could accompany myself. Like, I don't play guitar because I want to shred. I mean, I would love to be able to shred, but I learned guitar to be able to write my own songs and just not have to ask a boy to be in a band with him. Like, fuck that. So, fast forward. I convinced them. I'm like, this is insane. We need to do this. Like, this is crazy. So fast forward to the day before the show. And we've been practicing, like, singing and stuff, along with the tracks. But we go to Downtown Sound, and we are rehearsing now with Dennis, Nick Devotsky,
That's awesome.
Gordy, rest in peace, and a couple other guys, and I don't remember who was playing in the band. Maybe Jack?
Michael Bruce.
Did Michael Bruce... So Michael Bruce, I think, had to cancel for some reason. But anyways, it doesn't matter. So we were part of the Snake Charmers. That was the band for the night. The Snake Charmers. And we're sitting there and we're practicing. Or like the band is practicing. And Dennis is like, oh, nice to meet you. Da 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 da. We went for dinner first. And he's like, okay, so this is the part. And it was like a singer's like surreal moment. So I'm sitting there and we're just me and him are harmonizing parts to, I think it was Under My Wheel.
Pretty terrifying.
No. I mean, it was terrifying in that, like, this is why I'm saying it's crazy.
Yeah.
Because it's crazy. I'm sitting there and I'm singing and I'm harmonizing and it's just us. And I'm like, okay, I could go die now. What? This is insane. So the show was amazing the next night, and it was so fun, and we stood on the bar and we like did the shoop shoop and the oohs and the ahs and all the counter melodies and stuff, and it was really cool. But the night before, and then obviously jamming with the whole band, and just having that like privilege, and I mean,
The honor of it.
it's insane. Like, it does not fall short on me how, like, amazing that was and how impactful that was, like, on my life as, like, a musician and a singer. I'm getting a little chuffed up, actually, just to think about it. So thank you, Lou. And thank you, Dennis. But, yeah. So that, to me, it's like, okay. Oh, crazy. You sang with a guy from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Like, to me, that's the craziest thing. Because I'm a girl who grew up in Burlington, and we rewind to 20 years ago where I didn't know that I could do music living in suburbia. And now I'm doing music living in suburbia. So, yeah, it's not glamorous and it's not like, you know, oh, so gnarly and whatever, but that's my answer. Cool. Yeah, we'll do this one quick and dirty. Rundown. Started playing music, like, outside of my bedroom at, like, I don't know, 15. Mm-hmm. My first band, not including, like, jam bands, was, we didn't have a name, but I would get on the GO train. I would go to Long Branch, jam at Ruminal Records with this guy, Kevin Angelis, and Rob. He's gonna kill me. I'm not in touch with him anymore, and I don't remember his name, but his email was like 2000 strong or something. They're the ones that showed me Boy Sets Fire.
Great band.
But yeah, so good. So that was like my first band, and we were getting ready to book shows, and I chickened out and I quit the band like a little bitch. And then from there I auditioned for a million hardcore and like emo bands in Burlington, and every guy just was trying to date me, which sounds super ego because I was like, I was not the hot friend. I was cute and nerdy and hilarious.
There's a girl in our scene. Oh my god.
Right, and that was it. And it was like, oh yeah, come audition for our band. And then, like, one band in particular who will remain nameless, but they know who they are. was auditioning me for 3 months. I was going to jams twice a week, and they were like, oh, we want someone who can do like Evanescence style vocals. You can tell the era, early 2000s, right? And I was like, I can do that. I sing opera. Like, I'm classically trained. I can do crazy shit. Not that I necessarily want to do that, but okay. So I'm going to jams. I'm like, okay, guys, let's book a show. I learned from my past mistakes. Don't be a bitch. Book a show. Perform. It's not like I'd never been on stage before. I was doing theater like my entire life. So I'm ready to book the show, and they're like, oh, I'm so sorry. And this was like over the phone. I'm like, are you ready? Like, let's let's do this. He's like, oh yeah, no, sorry. We've just been sort of auditioning you this whole time. And I'm like, what? Like, I've been coming to jam. I've been paying for jam, like contributing, and I'm ready to book shows, and I've been writing songs. I've been writing songs with you, and you're auditioning me. This has been 3 months. An audition is once, maybe twice if you need a call back. Like, I'm an actress. I know how that works. And he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. It's not personal. We've gone in another direction. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. He's like, but if you ever want to, like, grab dinner and a coffee, I'd love to take you out sometime. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? It was like at that exact moment, I was like, I gotta learn guitar. Like, I gotta learn guitar. Fuck that. Like, this is bullshit. Like, is just so annoying. Oh my god. My like skin is crawling just thinking about it, and I was just like, oh, you're such a fucking asshole. And their band was terrible, and they went on to do a lot of shows and like whatever.
We'll talk off camera.
We'll talk off camera. But yeah, so that was like a non-band. And then from that point on, I was like, no, I'm just gonna play guitar. I'm gonna sing. A guy I dated again, he was giving me guitar lessons. We ended up dating. He helped me produce my first EP, which was great, and I'm so grateful for that. Like, no bad blood there at all. And then I just did the solo thing, and I just did it under Ashley Sloggett, which is so funny because I still, like, I hate that name. Like, I shouldn't say I hate that name. Like, it's my name. Everyone knows me as Sloggett or Sloggett. As Adam White and Ronson like to shout across a crowded bar. But, you know, I never, like, thought I would do music, like, give it a go. Yeah. And maybe I should have had a little bit more faith that it could go somewhere, because it ended up being quite a long time. But yeah, my next output will be under a different name. And then, because I'm crazy, me and my bestie, Kelly, the nurse, decided in our mid to late 20s that we were going to start a punk band, which is hilarious because our dear friend Rob, who is actually her husband now, he always said, like, 23, you're over the hill in punk rock years, right? It's kind of true. You play punk music because you want to piss off your parents, and you want to, like, you know, you kind of have an ego about how the world functions, and you want to get all of that out, and you want to, like, whatever, do your thing.
Just destroy everything.
You want to destroy everything, or you want to, like, you know, get out your angst. Well, we were, like, in our 20s, like, late 20s, when we started Dirty Jeans.
We had a lot of angst.
We had a lot of angst, and you know what? It was kind of like the era, too. It was going through navigating what the world was like at the time. And, I mean, it's just gotten crazier now, but ageism in the entertainment world, being women, like having to answer to biology, like, you know, you can be a dude in a band for 50 years and there's no, like, any career, right? Mm-hmm. Women have to think, well, if I want a family and children and all of this, I need to figure that out within the context of my career and what does that look like.
Yeah.
And, you know, not saying that we were all like, you know, baby hungry and all of that, but at the same time, you actually have to think about that shit as a woman. And not that our music was like super, you know, socially aware and political or anything like that, but that was kind of, I think, the energy behind it. It was like, we're going to do this thing because we can, while we can, and have a really great time, and let's try and take it as far as we can. And that was Dirty Jeans. And I mean, the spirit of it is just like three best friends making music, which is kind of timeless and ageless and wonderful. So that's pretty cool. But yeah. So that's my musical past. And I totally said I was going to be quick and dirty, and I wasn't. Sorry. What do I like most about being a musician or a photographer? So here's the thing. And I love that you put both in, because they are both such mega parts of me.
Okay.
I've been doing photography longer than I've been doing music.
Okay.
I learned on my dad's Nikon. I was shooting film. I learned how to develop in the darkroom. I was that weirdo kid that walked around with my camera and took pictures of like rusty chains and locks, and like while everyone's like, oh, you need to take snapshots, like I have very few pictures of people in my portfolio. I like stuff. I mean, I like shooting portraits. I like doing that. But yeah, so this is why they both get to exist in this answer. So photography, again, a lot of this goes back to local shows. When I was running shows, I felt like when I brought my camera, I was granted permission to be close, right? A camera has this power that, and you can relate, it allows you to get places that the plebeians are not allowed to. And being a girl and being an awkward, weird girl, very loud, very theater, very abrasive and no filter, like that was me, that is me. I didn't have a lot of friends. I had my core girlfriends and my high school girlfriends, like we would party and stuff together, but they liked to party and they liked to drink and stuff. Yeah. I was straight edge. So, you know, while they were, no shade, like I love them dearly, and I, you know, there's part of me that's like, oh, maybe did I miss out on like a ton of promiscuous sex? I don't know. But it is what it is. So, like, that camera was this, like, magical pass that would allow me to be in the energy and do this really, like, nerdy thing. Because photography is very technical. It's very, like, it's an artistic medium that requires so much technical lighting, and especially when you start using a flash. And I shot so many rolls of film at shows where there was this big black bar across the bottom of the image, and I couldn't understand why. I didn't know that you could like go on the internet and figure that out. Like, I mean, granted, there wasn't really much on the internet at the time, even if I wanted to learn it. So I went to my high school photography teacher, Mr. Cowling, shout out, represent, huge influence on my life. And I was like, what's going on here? What's wrong? Like, he's like, you're shooting with a flash? I was like, yeah. He's like, oh, your shutter speed's too high. So he's like, you have to slow your shutter speed down. Otherwise it's catching the flash, like it's catching the shutter in the flash and you're cutting your image in half. I'm like, amazing. It was like opening up a door. And then you had all these other photographers in the scene, like Fat Bill, who's now regular Bilverstein. And you had Gordy Ball, who was like the godfather of scene photography. He shot everyone. And
I think he did her demo. Anyways, going.
Gordy Ball?
We'll talk to him about
Yeah,
that.
well, he probably did. And because he shot everyone and he was... What's that?
Oakville?
Yeah. So he had this style that was unlike all the old school rock photographers, right? Where they all wanted like the nice, crisp, either harsh flash and it looks like a disposable in 1987 at a house show.
It's raw.
It's raw. Or you had the concert photographers of yesteryear, my bio dad being one of them. He would always shoot all the local bands. And like those were, okay, get it like perfectly exposed and make sure it's sharp and compensate for the ambient lighting with a flash or without a flash, and you make sure you use the right lens and stuff. Well, Gordy, from what I know, and I'm sure he was emulating other photographers that I don't know about, but like his style is so different from like Bob Gruen. So he would do the flash, but then he would turn his shutter speed like way down so the shutter stayed open, and that's how you got those light trails. And so me and like Brooks Reynolds and a couple other photographers, like Luis Mora, who was later on in the years, like we all were trying to do the Bill style, the Gordy style with the light trails. So you would see us all shooting, and then we do this with our camera, and that's how you got those like cool light trails. But when you,
cool.
Yeah, it looks so neat. And then you have the flash that freezes the subject, so you still get your subject in focus. So I'm giving you a photography lesson right now. So I'll tell you, being around the music with the camera was like peanut butter and bacon, as Kelly would say. Like they just went together.
Yeah.
And I think that was what gave me the confidence to exist in that space, even though it was a safe space. And even though I was running the shows, it was still really male dominated. It was still, like the cool guys. And that was the other thing. I was like an authority figure. Even though I was a peer, I was viewed as an outsider because I was the one that had to enforce the rules. So, she's like the buzzkill. She has the rules. But you know what? She takes cool pictures of us, so she can be around. And, it was like kind of my little safety net. If I had my camera, I was allowed to be there, if that makes sense.
It does.
Right? Because at that point, I wasn't doing my own music. And even when I was, later on, when I was doing my acoustic stuff, I would get booked on shows that were women in music, which, like, yes, girl power.
Yeah.
But I want to be where the boys are. Like,
Singled out.
Yeah, it's like I don't want to be segregated to the woman's show.
Yeah.
I want to be where the cool kids are. I want to be where, the Reason is and where St. Alvia is, and I want to be where Grade would have been, and I want to hang out with Dead and Divine, and I want to be around the bands.
Yeah.
And bands are mostly dudes. Obviously, there's lots of women in music now. Thank fucking God. But only 20 years ago, it was very different. 15 years ago, So I think that was what I liked most about photography. And then, and that's what I liked most about being, what do you like most about being a musician? If you fast forward to coming into my own as a singer and sort of it's only been in the last few years that I've stopped hating music. And I say that so, like, you know, candidly, in a facetious kind of way, because when Dirty Jeans ended, we never broke up. There was no bad blood. We just had, like, different life paths, right? And that is, again, what I talked about, like, being a woman in music. I stopped hating music for the, like, woe is me, I don't get to do it anymore. Because I had to remind myself, like, girl, you did this for, like, 10 years before you had a band. So why did you stop? And you have this gift, like, oh, so ego, but, like, I understand I can sing. Like, I know I can sing. I'm good at singing. And I take a lot of pride in my skill and my craft that I've spent my entire life practicing and honing, and, you know, hours and hours and hours of lessons and rehearsing and scales and all of that. Not so much guitar. Guitar, I could always practice more. But singing being my true love, it's one of those things that my mom will say, I was singing as a baby. Like, I wouldn't cry, I would sing, which is so hilarious and such a mom thing to say. What I love about having music now and having the ability to sing and do music is that I can get out what I'm feeling.
Yes.
And it's so trite, and it's so, like, such a bottled answer, but it's true. Like, there might be an eye roll or two at this interview, and I don't fucking care, because how I'm feeling and being able to do that in a song. And if I feel romantic, I feel sad, I feel angry, I feel sexy, I feel whatever, I can get that out. And I forget that not everybody can do that, and not everybody can write a song. And, you know, I think anybody can write a song. Not everybody can write a good song. And I mean, I don't know if I've written a good song yet. We'll see when I die if anybody likes the, oh, you know what? Yeah, the Juicy Fruit song from 1999. Oh, what a banger. But yeah, I mean, that's it in a nutshell. So, I'm just, like, so emo. Yeah, that's it. That's it. All right, favorite food. So posh. I'm freezing because I'm like, oh man, there's so many candidates here. I would have to say Thai. Thai, like, I love, like, a Thai basil. Bon Thai, like, near my house.
Thailand.
What's that?
Miss Thailand, Stony Creek.
Oh, I've never been, but I might have to try it. I love a good Thai basil. I mean, I'm French and Italian, so we have a lot of really good food. My grandmother, my Nana, she's an amazing cook. My mom is an amazing cook. So yeah, I mean, if I had to just grab food, it would probably be Thai. Which is so funny because, you know, you would think it would be like spaghetti and meatballs or some whatever. Although...
Pizza.
I know. Though, you know what? I might have to say... So my Nana makes tortilla. Do you know what that is?
No.
Sorry to the vegans out there. It is a meat pie. And it takes like 16 hours to make because of the process. And it's basically this French pastry like meat pie. And then you serve it with like this homemade chili sauce, which is like, it's not spicy chili. It's more of a relish, like a tomato relish. So that to me is like the epitome of my childhood and delicious. But yeah, I mean, I just love all food. So to ask me to pick a favorite, now if you had a favorite beverage, I would have to say coffee through and through. So you'll never find me without a coffee in my hand, either hot or an iced Americano. Right? I know. Here, see? But although it's empty and I'm like jonesing, I'm like, I need more coffee. But yeah, there you go. Food.
Yeah.
Love it. My most useless talent? I might have a couple. And I can't really like show it on camera because it's useless and stupid. It's useful to me. And it's very adult. It's very domestic. I am very good at being able to tell the color undertone in paint colors.
What?
So stupid. So like,
Explain.
so let's say you're painting a room, which I do often.
Yeah.
That is, we talked about this when you came in, how much I'm always redecorating.
Her cupboards look great in the kitchen.
Yes, painting my house and painting walls, and I'm like, I love nothing more than to just like slap up a fresh coat of paint.
Finish my kitchen.
Right? It feels so satisfying, and like anytime I need to like feel accomplished, I paint a wall. So I can like take like 18 white paint chips and I can tell you like, oh, easy, that one's cool, that one's cool, that one's green, that one's purple, that one's yellow. Like, so I can tell like the undertones, and it's like one of those things where I think it comes from photography, to be quite honest. I just have like a really good eye of like for color. So that's like a really stupid, like not cool answer.
But that's what it's supposed to be.
But that's what it is. I mean, I could do the thing where I can just like, when we would do Dirty Jeans jams, I was comic relief to Lindsay and Kelly because I would always go into these like vocal scatting, like, you know, I'm like scoodly da 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 boo doodle da da da. But you know, maybe that's useful. Like maybe if I joined like a jazz trio, it wouldn't be useless.
There you go.
So yeah, I mean, we'll go with the paint colors, I guess. Like, I don't fucking know. This is... Steve, you jumped the shark, man. You jumped the shark with this question.
You're welcome.
Yes. Yeah. I don't think there's anything else. That's it. That's done. I'm done. Thank you, Steve, for having me on your video... podcast interview?
I don't know what it is.
What is it? A docu-series? Inside the actor's studio? Inside...
You can give it a brand new name now.
I
It's
know.
a 10 questions with.
10 questions. 10 questions with. This has been 10 questions with me, Ashley Sloggett. To any of you that actually watched the entire thing, I hope you found this entertaining, emotional, and could put up with my tangents of whatnot. I'm excited for what the future holds, and I think I covered everything. And if not, we can always do a part 2.
Yeah.
So that's it. Cool. Yeah. Okay, bye.